All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 154 tonight. We're going to be talking about The Phenomenon, the new documentary by James Fox. Came out a couple days ago. And before we get into it, why don't you check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Mind Escape Podcast. For $2 a month, you'll get exclusive content. We have a bunch of extra content on there if you want to check that out. We also have shirts that just came in, so we'll be figuring that out as well. And then when you're done heading there, head on over to indrasweb.org and sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. And it's an app we created dedicated to rational discourse on all these fringe and alternative topics, and check it out. So
Beautiful, beautiful.
what's going on?
Not much, man. What's the good word?
I don't know. The last couple of days have been kind of hectic. We had a lot of stuff going on, a couple cancellations,
Yeah.
things of that nature. Things, you can't avoid that stuff sometimes, so you just got to keep rolling. But, I texted you the other day, like, we got to check out this documentary. And when you realized it was $20, you bowed out.
Well, I didn't want to buy the thing.
Well, I would say I hate paying that much too. I like renting things, $4 or $5, fine.
For
$20,
sure.
but I had an Amazon gift card, so I'm like, why not?
Oh, nice, nice.
And it was worth it. I mean, I felt like it was one of the better UFO documentaries I've probably seen. It was narrated by Peter Coyote. Do you know who that is?
No.
He's an actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. He's, I think, mostly in like the 90s, but he narrates like a lot of documentaries on like the West and like Native Americans and stuff like that. You should pull up his picture. I think you'd know who he is, but he's got like a nice voice for it. It's like perfect. So I thought that was a great voice.
I thought there was another actor that was tied to it too, and I pulled up the credits there. Did someone like produce it?
Well, the guy that made it's James Fox. I don't know who. I mean, they had like all the politicians and like Harry Reid and
Right.
Bill Clinton. Like, it's all like clips. It's all clips from. The thing I liked most about it actually was that there was a lot of footage I've never seen, and like a lot of extended footage of just clips you normally see, but you don't normally see the full clip. And they showed a lot of the full clips, which I liked. So.
Oh, you know what? I was mistaken. I thought it's a Jamie Fox. My bad.
Welcome home, mycology. We see you down there. But yeah, I thought it was worth it. I think you should definitely check it out. I mean, I don't know if it'll be at a lower price at some point, but I think you can get it on the non-HD for $15. Not that, I mean, if you're going to buy it, you might as well buy it. But
Oh, I didn't even see that option. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would assume that this one's a little better caliber because the other ones are just, not that they were poor caliber, but they were just free on Netflix and stuff. This one actually is a movie that was released, so.
Well, this one didn't have like an agenda. Like a lot of documentaries, I mean, there is an agenda, but it's not what you think it is, in the sense that like when you watch some of these UFO documentaries, there's a lot of, ego stuff. And then you get a lot of like non-clip things and narratives placed in there and stuff
Right.
like that. So this was kind of just like purely either interviews with people directly correlated to the whole UFO thing via military and government and stuff like that. But then it was also, you had a lot of, like I said, like extended clips of, J.L. and Hynek and, the Rua Zimbabwe stuff and all that stuff. So it's actually, spoiler alert too, I don't want to ruin this if you're waiting to see it. I mean, we're not going to.
That was what I was going to ask you. I know you wanted to get the episode in real fast, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of these people haven't seen this thing, so we'll tread lightly, folks.
Well, I mean, I don't know how I've never really, unless it's like a Game of Thrones type thing when you don't want to know who gets killed in the next,
Right.
There's not really anything that, like, if you're already familiar with the whole UFO topic or, all the history of it and stuff like that, you probably know almost everything in it. So it's not like one of those things where there's like some crazy secret interview that's never been. It's just a lot of like extra footage and longer clips and stuff like that. So, did you look up Peter Coyote?
Yeah, I did. He looks like a coyote.
But yeah, you did you like recognize him? I mean, like I said, he's been in movies.
Um, no.
Hmm.
Maybe his younger self.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like in the '90s, that would have been 30 years ago or 25 years ago at this point.
He was in Aaron Brockovich, Sphere,
Yeah.
E.T. So
Oh
he's
yeah.
got some stuff in his
Was he the
catalog.
dad from E.T.? I think he was.
Well, he's definitely a lot older now. Is he? He's not British yet. Oh, he's an American actor. All
Yeah,
right.
he's
Well,
American.
yeah.
Um,
Patch Adams. He's got a nice this not discography, but a nice catalog of stuff.
all right. So again, spoiler alert: if you want to see this documentary and things easily ruin stuff for you, abort. So, um, so it starts off with like the whole Kenneth Arnold Mount Rainier sightings in Washington, 1947. I think he's the one that coined the term flying saucer.
Hmm.
Um,
Not too interested. Or I'm not too familiar with those.
that's what I'm saying. You should have checked this documentary out because it goes through the history. And I know you're not really that familiar. I mean, I know you're interested in the topic, but you're not really that familiar with a lot of like the detailed stuff.
Well, I know the big boys, the five that we did because we made that little movie on it, but I've never heard of one around Mount Rainier. It's interesting because I want to hike around that bad boy.
Yeah, you should go visit our buddy Lee. I don't know if he lives directly over there, but I know he lives out that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was like the first where it starts off and then goes into this McMillan sighting. I want to say that that was in Oregon, maybe 1950. So it starts off West Coast,
Uh-huh.
right after World War II, and then you get to Gordon Cooper, and Gordon Cooper was an astronaut, and I believe he was seeing a lot of weird stuff too. There was a show on, I don't know if it was Discovery Channel a few years ago. It was called Cooper's Treasure, and it was this guy who became friends with Cooper, like a younger guy. He was like a treasure hunter. His family was like treasure hunters, and they went searching. They had this like map of all these spots in the ocean off like, Bahamas and Bermuda
Mm-hmm.
and all these like different locations. And supposedly there's some weird metal signatures that he was gathering this data from space, Gordon Cooper, when they were, you know, in space, looking down on Earth. So, excuse me. So that's an interesting show. So people should check that out if they're fascinated by that kind of stuff, because I think that there's probably some crossover there to some degree. So yeah, and then it goes into that. So it's like all the early year stuff, and then it goes into, there was some ones I wasn't familiar with, like Nash and Fortenberry, who were pilots who saw stuff over Chesapeake Bay. They saw like glowing red objects doing 90-degree turns at 12,000 miles an hour, supposedly. So, I mean, again, this stuff has been happening since the 40s, and we know, we've talked about this before, sightings go back since the beginning of conscious man writing these things down, or,
Yeah.
marking them down.
Yeah, it's wild. It's easy to chalk it up to nowadays when we have drones and all this crazy technology, but if you go back that far, it's like, what could this possibly be?
I mean, the weird thing to me is like how different everything is. Like, it's an orb, it's a tic tac, it's a triangle. There's so many different shapes and variables and sizes, and there's nothing that's really that I mean, kind of, I guess you could say the flying saucer or the disc is kind of the main archetype of the saucers, but
As we see behind you there, looks like you're on Mars or something.
I am.
Coming live from Mars, ladies and gentlemen.
No, true story. I was on Adobe, looking through their pictures, and I saw that, and it's kind of almost exactly what I saw in like a meditation one time. It was like a meditation that like slid into lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
And I was laying there in my bed, just, and to my left, everything turned red. And then there was like a flying saucer disc to my left, like a few hundred meters to my left, like hovering, like slowly, like making like a low frequency, like hum. So that was kind of a weird thing. Again, I was like meditating and in like a lucid dreaming type state. So
Yeah,
um
it's interesting.
I think but yeah, so I saw that picture. I'm like, oh, that's kind of crazy. That's pretty similar to what I experienced. Have you ever had any weird dreams or anything having to do with UFOs or?
Well, I've been partaking in this sober October, so I haven't been having any cannabis in the last week, and my dreams have been absolutely insane.
I believe it. Um,
Nothing really extraterrestrial, but I did have something. It was more of a fantasy, like a Game of Thrones type thing. But yeah, I actually woke up this morning and I've been working on some music, and I got two songs. I'm going to be doing a music video, but I actually had this really good idea pop into my head about a music video idea, and I think I'm going to try and go with it. But yeah, it's interesting how when you're in that realm between being in sleep and awake, ideas come to you, and it's hard to remember them, so I try and write them all down.
I think yeah, some of my best ideas have actually come in like the shower or um at night, like, I'll turn the TV off for a little bit and just like meditate or sit in darkness. Those are usually when my best ideas come to me.
Yeah. Well, it was a good continuation because a lot of my good ideas come when I'm running, and I do that right in the morning. So it was like I woke up, I had this idea, then I went running, and I pondered on it more, and more and more ideas came from it. So I kind of like that little ritual. I think I'm gonna try and do that more often. But yeah, for sure, having no cannabis. I don't know if it's because I'm not getting into the deep REM because the cannabis would allow me to, or I don't know. I think it's because I'm kind of sleeping lighter right now, but I do know when I partake in cannabis, a lot of the time I don't have dreams at all.
On that episode with Matthew Walker on Joe Rogan a while back, he was like a sleep expert. He was saying that that's a problem for a lot of people, either like drinking or smoking bud or whatever interrupts your like REM cycle. And he was saying that technically that sleep is still valid, but it's not as quality, I guess, because you're not going through like the natural progressions of it or something like that, if I remember.
Well, you have to weigh your options. If you have really trouble sleeping and you turn to cannabis and you get some sleep from it, that's better than no sleep. So, that's the way I look at it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, I'm all about the CBD, and I started taking melatonin again too because I do have problems sleeping. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get more into the CBD, the less of the psychoactive stuff. And I know they have like CBD cigarettes. They have actually strands of cannabis that are way higher in CBD and a lot lower in the THC. So maybe I'll get a little THC treat with some of that CBD stuff. But I think the CBD is the more beneficial for the medicinal stuff.
well,
THC has its own
well,
stuff,
yeah,
but
and if it's legal where you are and you can partake, then
yes, yes,
they
yes.
say that the 50-50 of CBD, the ratio to THC, is the best because they somehow counterbalance each other. But
100%. Yeah, I was talking to a big grower dude, and he's like, if you ever smoke too much, you can counter it with CBD, either a pill or the tincture, stuff like that.
mm-hmm. So, back to the UFO stuff. Dun, dun, dun. What were we talking about last year? Oh, we were talking about Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, and then those two pilots. So then it goes into, I don't know if you're familiar with the famous sighting. I think it's 1952 over the White House in Washington, D.C. I think there was like 7 blips on the radar or something, and then they scrambled the jets, and then these things just disappear. And then it goes into like the CIA Blue Book stuff, J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée.
Mm-hmm.
Hynek and Vallée were working together on some things, and I guess Vallée found something in Hynek's files that helped him see that there's some other, parts of whether it's like a private program or one of these outside companies. There's something else that does happen that people aren't aware of. So, I mean, that could mean anything. It could mean that they're testing things. It could mean that they're retrieving things. I mean, who really knows?
Exactly.
Um, I mean, how do you feel about the whole subject too? Do you think it is our technology, or do you think that or someone's technology, or do you think it's like a breakaway civilization? Maybe some rich people figured it out, or somebody from the past had figured it out and pop in and out, or do you think it's something from somewhere completely elsewhere?
Well, I'd like to believe that it's aliens coming from space, just because that's the better, the more fun theory. But I don't
Is it
know.
the most dangerous though too?
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that if a civilization is that advanced that they can traverse uh, light years away, that they would not be resorting to all the negative things that people think are like, like an Independence Day movie scenario. I just don't see that because the whole like in my spiritual awakening, when you're vibrating at the higher frequencies, you don't even succumb to the negative, the fear, and the hate and all that kind of stuff. It's all more like you're always just trying to get to the love. And I don't know. I would assume that if a race of creatures was to the level where they could go across the galaxy, that they would probably be immersed within that love, and they would probably have better intentions with what they were going to do with us. That's the way I look at it. But I don't know. What do you think on
Yeah,
that?
I mean, well, I feel like if they were going to do something, they would have already done it.
That's the other point. Yeah.
I mean, like, right? I mean, what would be? I mean, you could go to like the zoo hypothesis, which is that we're being like cultivated in some zoo like um, Earth terrarium.
Hmm.
I mean, but I don't know. What do you think?
But then,
I mean, what do you think about that specific one, the zoo one? I mean, that one's kind of dark in a way, right? Because I mean, but that's also like a commentary on us too, the way we treat animals. I mean, look, we all have to eat. Everything eats. I mean, things can only live through process of death. So
right.
whether it's
Well,
plants or whatever, you can't eat dirt. I mean, I guess you could. I don't know how long you'd survive though.
I think we had a guest on. We were talking about the being Earth bias,
Yeah.
and I think that has a
Matt
lot.
Tiller. Shout out to Matt
Oh, okay, that was Matt. Okay,
Tiller
yeah.
for real.
I really think that that's a big part to play because we all we know is what we know, and we don't know much. So it's hard for us to come to conclusions other than the things that we've witnessed in our own time, which is conquering other civilizations and taking civilizations that are not as advanced and enslaving them and things like that. So it's like I don't know. It's easy for us to go down that rabbit hole, but I think again, if something's moving across the galaxy, they're gonna have a better intention, and I don't think they're just. I could, there is some gravitas to having them come down and watch us, because again, we do study ants and stuff like that, so I don't know. It could
But
go a million different ways.
And you pointed out that like the evil nature of things like from our own history and just the way that we've acted in the past, like you've done evil things to each other, and
Hmm.
how we're kind of at this point now where everybody for the most part realizes everything that's pretty much happened to this point via the internet and things we can piece together and stuff like that. So I think that is part of that is in our psyche with it when it comes to like the fear aspect of it, because it's like you mentioned all we know is what we know. So when all we know is us and we've seen what we're capable of and what we've done, things should be scared, in my opinion.
Right.
So I mean, maybe they're scared for us. Obviously, maybe we're not a threat to them. If like you mentioned, they have the crazy technology to traverse time and space or galaxies or whatever. We might not be an exact threat to them, but maybe we held some importance or some value that we're not aware of. I don't know.
I like to gravitate more towards the idea that it's some kind of interdimensional thing going on where whatever it may be, um, maybe it is us from the future. I don't know, but the stuff that really stands out to me is that John Mackey with the kids
John Mack.
John Mack, yeah, in the rural Zimbabwe episode. That's the one that is probably my favorite to look into because kids are pretty,
You
they're
should
not
have
gonna
spent
make
the
up stories.
$20 and watched the documentary because there's like 20 minutes at the end of this documentary on it.
But so, well, take us through that little tidbit. But again, the kids aren't gonna lie about what they saw. So
The
I,
interesting thing to me about the documentary is they talk about a sighting, I think, from 1959 in Papua New Guinea, where I think an Australian guy was, around a bunch of indigenous people, and they saw something very similar to what the Rua Zimbabwe sighting kids saw, which was these beings come out of the saucer, and they had like these like
almond shaped eyes,
almond
get it?
shaped eyes, like black suits, you know, I think longer hair or something.
Mm-hmm.
It both of them struck me as being similar, and they're actually not that far in geography from each other, comparatively. When you're talking distances from different countries and continents and stuff. So
Right. How did the movie like lay out the information? Was it more as a like a timeline of
well,
this
yeah,
is
that's what I was
beginning?
gonna say. That yeah, it starts off like I said, 1947, the kind of Tharnal type stuff, and then starts to evolve. They did Roswell, a little bit later towards the middle, and then they would go into like the 60s, and then some of the more modern day stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The A-Tip and Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon and all the stuff from Unidentified, the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, all those. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it goes. It went kind of in chronological order, and there wasn't any like narrative. Like when you look at, let's see, like CE5 or Sirius, yeah, those are well made, documentaries, but there's like a message in between some of the stuff, and there's like a narrative and like an opinion, you know what I'm saying? So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
this was more of in the style of just putting clips together of
Oh
historical
okay.
things associated with, but there was some interviews intertwined, and there, but it's just well done in that way where, again, the movie speaks for itself. You don't need to have that extra dialogue in there.
It doesn't have Mickey York in the background.
Mickey Rourke.
Mickey Rourke digging in.
I swear to God, you get 90% of your words have 90% of the word correct, except for like the last vowel or something.
Hey man, there's a lot of going on in my
It was
brain.
Mickey Dork.
Yeah. I like that though. Present the information. Let us be the judge of it. Because with this kind of stuff, you're gonna look foolish to a certain. There's no way to present this without looking strange to one particular group. You know what I'm saying? Like if you go towards one way, you say these are aliens from a different galaxy, then you're gonna upset a certain group. If you go the other way and say these are just people, on Earth
People are
making
getting
machine.
upset. That's what I don't understand. Like, there's no reason to get upset at any, like, I think, I don't know. I just think that comes from a place of people just not having all the information. Like, for instance, when you look into something new that you start to get passionate about, whether, for instance, this, like we've been doing this podcast and researching these esoteric topics and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Early on, again, I believed a lot more of some of the more magical, mystical things than I'm not saying that those things don't exist. I'm just saying I believed more of a spectrum, and now I've whittled that spectrum down to a point where I kind of have a grasp on what's actually weird and fringe and that kind of a thing, and what's BS and people creating narratives and lying and telling stories and stuff like that.
Well, I think people are looking for something magical. They're always, especially with the TV and the movies and everything. It's like they want to see something extraordinary. But the reality is, I was out at this park by my house, and these two deer came up to me, and I was just hanging out with these deer for 10 minutes. That's not that crazy, but at the moment, I was like, this is magical. This right here, just to be able to see an animal this
Were they
close.
zombie deer? Did they have chronic wasting disease?
No, they were eating, they were nibbling.
All right.
But no, it's just that kind of stuff. And sometimes when I'm running and I see birds even fly in the sky, it's like this is magical right here. So I don't know. Again, maybe that has something to do with me taking psychedelics or something like that. But I think people just take common things in their lives as just mundane, and they don't really realize how magical just being alive is altogether. And again, you see that within our society of alcohol and drugs and things like that. Everybody's trying to ramp up their experience in some way or another, and I don't think you necessarily need that. That's just for me though.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole you're right about the magical, like we are living, breathing magic, but on I think that can be used in two different ways. So I think on one end, you have like you can use that and say, oh, we are living, breathing magic. So what else is possible? So I think that's the people that believe in things. That's where they come from. Like if this is possible, anything's
Yeah.
possible. And then you have the other people saying, well, no, 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 no. There's limitations, and you can't do this, this, and this, and this. And those would be like the materialist, reductionist type people. And they have their own thoughts on things. So at some point, like I said, I think there's something in the middle where there is something more to life that we're just not aware of. But then there's also, it's not, we're not all going to some cloud, some Zeus godlike character in the sky or something like that. So
I mean, my main point was that people are always looking for the extraordinary. I look at the some of the biggest franchises and movies, Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff like that. Like people love that kind of thing. And again, it's interesting to a level, but I don't know.
well, it's like all the hero's journey type stuff too, like Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces, and that's the story that's as old as time as Beauty and the Beast. No, it's it's
No,
it's
they
that
call me
hero.
Maurice.
It's that hero's journey. It's
Right.
but I think that I don't know. The whole topic itself is just weird. It's weird to talk about. It's weird to think about. I was thinking hard about it last night after I watched the documentary. What do I like? What is going on? And I don't know. It's very hard to. It's not something like we talk about psychedelics and having these mystical experiences. Well, for the most part, anybody could experience that. This is something that either chooses people or it's random chance. It's not something that everybody can experience. So I think that's why that's such a weird gray area.
Yeah, and you've asked me a couple of times about what my views on it are, and the bottom line is I really don't have any views. I just take in the information. I'm not going to make a decision one way or another because
Yeah,
I
but what do you think?
flip-flopped too many
My
times
point is like,
on
what
it.
do you think so far? You could say that.
Yeah, I could say that's the problem though. Like after we made the alien top 5 thing, I was super convinced that something went down, but I don't know. I flip-flop back and forth. At this point, I'm just like, there is something strange going on. I'll agree with you on that point. Other than that, I don't have the knowledge or the know-how, or I'm not gonna jump to a conclusion. And that's essentially what anyone's doing at this point is jumping to a conclusion.
Yeah, but I think you can say what you think so far based on what you know.
And by golly, that is what I think.
Is what?
Is I don't have a view on it. I have no conclusion. I'm right in the middle.
If you had to make a decision right now,
Oh man, that's
I'm
rough.
not. I won't even say like aliens. Let's not even say aliens or do you believe that there is something greater than a microbe? So let's say like a little chipmunk at least.
Yeah, I do.
Or some like little walrus swimming in some weird ocean. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think so. I just watched a little documentary called My Octopus Teacher, and
Oh yeah, I wanted to see that. How is it?
that's really cool. You should check that out. But even just watching these octopuses, I don't know, is it octopi or
Octopi. Yeah, there's different. You can actually say
I've
that
heard
one different
people
ways. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, just watching those things like change color, and when they're sleeping, they change color, and it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I saw there was a video, I think, where this guy, or was I reading something? I forget. There was an octopus, and this guy was like losing fish out of his tank. He didn't know what was going on, and he had an octopus, but it was in a completely different tank. This octopus would like unscrew the latch on its
Yeah,
cage at night, go out, crawl across the ground on the normal surface, crawl up the side of the other cage, and then go up there and start eating the fish out of the other tank.
Yeah, and that's one of the main themes in this movie is because they're an invertebrate. Um, they have a completely different reasoning mindset. Again, I don't think we know that much about it. I'm assuming we're jumping to a lot of conclusions with that, but they do have like this whole reasoning behind the because the this guy he friends an octopus in the movie and he goes and he visits it every day and this thing becomes actually like comfortable with them and
Hmm.
he watches it like play with fish and stuff. It's pretty crazy and it comes up with these different techniques to avoid predators like sharks and stuff. And he just talks about how their mind it works in a completely different manner than ours would. Um, but
That's
that
actually
is
kind of the
closest to aliens as we're gonna see right now.
what's the is it the Arrival? Is that the one with like Amy Adams?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's similar. That movie is about like I for,
Spoiler alert.
well, that movie's been out for like 10 years or something. 5 years at
Yeah, I
least.
know. We don't want to tickle someone the wrong way though.
So that one they figure out like they have to figure out how to communicate with these aliens through this like glass,
Yes.
and they end up figuring out they have like seven appendages. So I forget what whatever cephalopod or something like I don't know. It was
Yeah, yeah.
seven appendage whatever. It was like a huge octopi type thing. Um, and they figured out that basically what you're saying, like since it has seven appendages, it thinks in some sort of way correlated to that, like its cognition.
Yeah.
So that was how they ended up like figuring out how to communicate with it in the
It's
movie.
actually a phenomenal movie. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like it too. Um, what's the one with um, Natalie Portman? Do you
When
know what I'm
the
talking about?
yeah, when the
Is that one
asteroid
even really
crashes.
alien? You know, like is it? It is alien, but
It
it's not.
is.
And then the end of that one's really weird with that bean.
Yeah, let me see. I'll find the name of it. I can't remember, but I saw that in the movie theaters. That movie's phenomenal.
Uh, yeah, I liked that one too. I mean, I think that I thought the Arrival one was better from um, like how would we communicate with them kind of a thing. But
Yeah, it was a little more realistic. It's called Annihilation.
that's what it was, Annihilation.
Yeah, both good, really good films. If anybody's interested in that kind of stuff, sci-fi, that those are right up there.
So back to the review of Phenomenon. Um, it talks a little. Jacques Fillet's actually in it a decent amount. Um, I mentioned that file he discovered, and then goes into another school sighting, I think in Westfall, which is in Australia, and a bunch of school kids again. So that was weird too. Like, what's up with these school sightings? Is it some school, some galactic school coming to, learn at the school of Earth? Who knows what's going on there? But, so there were some similarities and some stuff I hadn't even heard of. There's one that was close to home too, the Ann Arbor, Hillsdale area sighting from, I think what was that, 66? Like Gerald Ford, who was a congressman at the time, got involved. Who eventually became president, and Hynek. I think that's the one where they said it was swamp gas. They like tried to write it off as swamp gas,
Hmm.
and that
And you
was
talk about To the Stars Academy in this one?
yeah. At the end, like I said, they talk about Luis Elizondo, the videos and the Harry Reid stuff and the program. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, if you're gonna make an alien documentary, you got to bring that kind of stuff in there too. That's the most compelling stuff.
I mean, thus far, right? Those videos. I mean, the pilot testimonies, all that stuff's interesting. I mean, where does it go from here? Is there more videos? Is there some technology being worked on where we can see more of these things regularly and kind of build data off that? I don't know. Where does it go?
That's why I kind of lean towards more of the consciousness-based things because we have the technology now. We have a phone, we have a camera and a video camera in our pocket, and it doesn't really seem like more things are being caught. It kind of seems like it's still a steady trickle of information.
Yeah, why is it always the dude with like the flip phone in modern times trying to catch. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Same
what's
thing with ghosts though. Like if
yeah.
those things are actually happening, is it in a physical is it in our physical realm, or is it more of a mental thing that you're tapping into some kind of other dimension, or something's
I mean,
communicating
and
with you?
what if we built? I mean, is it about building algorithms? To help see these things. That might be something to
Yeah.
look at.
Or I'm more of the proponent of raising the consciousness as raising your vibration. So maybe as a full society raises our vibration higher and higher, which we're obviously having trouble getting past the point we're at now, but
I mean, well, right now it's probably it's at a very there's a big dissonance going on right now.
that's the kind of stuff that happens before a big wave that would push you over. You know what I'm saying? You need some kind of uh, alterations and problems to bring more things into the forefront, and other people can get on board and realize they need to make some kind of changes in their lives. Like, take me for example. I had some predicaments that I needed to face, and me facing these problems made me live in a whole new way and see things in a whole new way. So it was like you need to ruffle the feathers a little bit to push you in that right direction.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right. Actually, I think that you had a little rough patch there, and you kind of came out. I don't know. I think you're in the best mindset I've seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's got its ups and downs, and the one big thing that I've given up is the alcohol, and it's an interesting way to live because whenever a problem hits you, you always want to just turn to that. Like, it's an easy escape to just kind of silence your mind, but when you don't have that crutch, it's not harder to deal with it. You're just forced to deal with it at that time. Usually when you drink, you're just pushing that problem to the next day, or you're just drowning it all together. But the fact that you're dealing with things sober, when you fix something, it kind of stays fixed.
Um, I think for me, I mean, it's similar, but it's different. Obviously, we have our own things, but yeah, I think that if you can, it's like a bad habits of like thinking. Like you get like stuck
Mm-hmm.
in these like cycles. So it's like you have to constantly be aware of it, and then break free of it, and then you can get to that point where you're starting to create good cycles. And if you create a good enough good cycles, well, then it's like now you can kind of get back to maybe like what you look back as the good old days of your past or whatever. It's kind of like back into that zone a little bit.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I struggle with things day to day. It's just you treat them day to day, and you don't try and go to I obviously I have anxiety and things like that, and that's a projection of bad things to happen in the future. Um, so I've been really trying to focus on that and understanding where that's coming from, understanding how to deal with it, and a lot of that's just being in the moment and being present. It's not that simple, but it is that simple.
Absolutely. So in the documentary, then it goes into the whole thing with the whole Edward Condon. He's a physicist. He started a whole thing where they were looking into all the UFO sightings, and that was via the University of Colorado, I think. Um, I What I think happened was he made some weird statement like, I don't think there's anything to the UFO phenomenon, but I'm not supposed to come to that conclusion for another year or something weird like that.
What?
Meaning like he was told to come to that conclusion regardless. So,
Right.
I'm trying to think what else. Oh, and then it gets into the whole. Well, then everything kind of ends a little bit in 1969. But then the documentary shifts into like the whole nuclear aspect of it, which would be reports of these things shutting down. I think Harry Reid even mentions that these things shutting down the nuclear capabilities, even if they wanted to launch them, they couldn't have, or something like that. And then, what else do they mention? Just all the different incidences reported at these different facilities, and even things that happen in like Russia and stuff like that. So lots of weird stuff regarding and if you look at the phenomenon, it starts and picks up after World War II. What happened after World War II? Well, at the end of World War II, we dropped two, nuclear bombs, which devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So,
Yeah.
that maybe had an impact on a lot of things. Those ripples might have been able to be felt throughout the universe, in some degree. We talk about Indra's Web, the new app, but that's the concept of Indra's Web, is that everything's connected, almost like a neural net or like a brain. Think of like the universe as a bunch of neurons and everything's connected, and each pearl or in Indra's net, it's like a bunch of jewels and pearls that reflect off each other. So with this concept, the universe is a bunch of connected strings or chords or whatever. So
Yeah, and I really dig into that concept myself because I think everybody on Earth is connected in a way, and we need to embrace that. And when we do, then we treat people as you treat yourself, and that would be another stepping stone into getting into this new level of consciousness.
I think sometimes, though, when we talk about these things, when you're talking about, somebody just mentioned dimensions on there. When you're talking about dimensions, interdimensional or like 5D or whatever, we talked about that. I've recommended that book, Flatland, by Edwin A. Abbott. It's like a turn of the century book, but it just describes like what something in the first dimension would see of dimension 2 and what dimension 2 would see of dimension 3, and so on and so on and so forth. So maybe UFOs are something that we're not, we only know of the spatial dimensions that we're aware of now. Does that mean, could there be more? And if there could or is more, does that mean what we're seeing of UFO is only part of something,
Right.
or the edge of something?
It makes a lot of sense that the only way you can capture the UFO is through the mind. Because think about the technology. I was just thinking about this while you were talking. Is my camera's so advanced. I was out there trying to capture a lightning bolt and just ripping photo after photo after photo. And it's like no one's ever captured a UFO like in a nice camera like the ones that everybody has now.
Right.
So in my mind, it's got to be something that has something to, it's something built in within you that's allowing you to see this phenomenon.
Yeah, it could be also something beyond the five senses too. It could be something having to do with your, I don't know, something weird having to do with like awareness and consciousness, like consciousness if it's like a field and not just confined to your brain, then or your body, then maybe that opens up the door to thinking about this thing in kind of a whole different way. So,
well, let me ask you this: is there any location on the globe that it seems to be more prone to this stuff?
Yeah, we're all the nuclear. I mean, out west is where, when people, you look at a lot of like the people that do like UFO shows and things like that, it's all like desert related or near Area 51. It's all kind of Vegas, LA, Washington, it's all out that way. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Chicago is actually a hot spot for UFOs, but I'm just saying in terms of a lot of the sightings are out west near all the nuclear facilities. And then if you look at, that was actually in the documentary too, they had like a time lapse where it went through like each year and how many atomic bombs were dropped or nuclear bombs.
That's pretty cool.
And where it was dropped and like what country, and then it had this tally, and then you get to the top and it's like we've dropped like over 1,000, China's dropped like 900, Russia's dropped like a ton, and it just seeing them all go off, and this like time lapse is just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, let me reiterate that it's not cool that there's bombs being dropped, but I'm sure that's interesting to see the level. I've seen like videos of like the best video games for the year and like the ones that sold the most, and it's crazy to see once you get to a certain time.
Yeah, nice pivot, bro.
Pivot. No, I just wanted to make that clear. I don't support war or anything, but it was very slow going, and then all of a sudden, boom, like a bomb. No pun intended.
So okay, so that happened. So after World War II, you start to see this whole thing, and there was a lot more testing that happened after that too. So it never really stopped. So maybe these things are something that keeps an eye on that. They could be von Neumann probes. We've talked about that, where when a civilization is able to create technology that can then create its own technology, you start to self-replicate throughout the universe, and it starts to spread out exponentially, and then you start to probably see these things all over the place. So it could be something like that. Maybe somewhere in the next galaxy or our galaxy in another solar system was able to create some sort of advanced android probes or something like that. So
Yeah. That would definitely be the way we would do it. But again, we're pretty Earth biased.
you and the stupid Earth bias. I mean, I agree with it, but
Wow.
I mean, here's the thing. So like philosophically, you know how we talk about like science, like it's always evolving, but you have to. You can't just be the one saying that it's just gonna keep diverting to something else. You have to help get it some. Does that make sense? Like you can't just be like, oh, it's just changing and that's it. Like I feel like you have some sort of. You have to interact with it in some way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I thought about that too. I'm like, I can't just keep saying this is gonna evolve, so there's no sense of like latching on, because you do kind of have to latch on if you're gonna learn anything. I mean, you can't just, keep saying, parodying the whole scientific revolution and that kind of stuff, because even though it's possible it might happen again soon, we don't know. The fact that science is at a standstill or whatever, I don't think that I don't know. I just feel like you can't keep making those statements without helping do something to, in some sort of way, which I think we try and do on the show. I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying in terms of how you look at it, you can't just keep handing it off to that, if that makes sense.
Well, let me put it like this. I'm a photographer, so you can't just like all of a sudden just go out and just start taking the weirdest pictures ever. I mean, you could, but it's good to learn everything, and then you break the rules with some kind of knowledge behind what you're doing. So that's essentially what you're saying. It's good to learn everything, and then you can kind of jump around and make accusations or try and break out of the box.
So here's where I think it would make it is to have the knowledge of the whole ever changing, ever evolving whole aspect of it, and to use that in some sort of debate against somebody who's dogmatic that they have all the answers or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's never been the way me or you have approached anything.
No, I know. But I'm making the point because I feel like, again, we have like an application. You can't I just don't want to keep making that same point about science always evolving and not add the context that you should still learn science, if that
exactly
makes sense.
Yeah, well, I do say it a lot where it's like, oh, 100 years ago we believed this, so 100 years ago what we're believing now is going to be worthless. But that's more of more of joking in a sense. Obviously,
no, I know. No, I know.
We're building towards something, but you got to kind of take it as a grain of salt in a way, because some kind of revolution will happen and we'll be like, wow, like look back at the Earth is flat is a good example. Everybody thought that was the norm.
No.
And then all of a sudden, boom, it's round, and now that's the way it is. So
yeah, I mean, a long time ago they thought that, and then they thought it was round, and then they tried to go back. And now you have, I'm just gonna say it, not the most intelligent people that believe that still. So
yeah.
I mean, that's one thing.
I think the basketball player that even was saying that, I don't know what his name was. He was on some interview and he's like, yeah, he goes, I was wrong. I was wrong about that.
I think it was maybe Kyrie Irving. I know he. But I think that when you have a responsibility. Obviously, that was stupid of him to make that argument, because if you're not prepared to like look into something wholly. But my whole point about the Earth thing is like we have all the video, we have all the photos, and whether they
and math. The math is really
the math, exactly. Great point. And then you have all different ways to debunk it, and then you have, when you listen to these people that believe it isn't round, they don't ever try and explain it in like a scientific way or give you the reason why. They'll send you to like a website or a video on somebody else trying to explain it, and then that thing is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never like that person's able to like explain it away. It's always like, oh, check this video out or check that video out. It's like they give you links to things. It's like, I don't want a link, you know? So,
Well, that's one of our most useful tools is the math because that stuff it doesn't change. So if you can use that to prove something, then you have yourself a very good foundation of
yeah, the
proving
ancient
that point.
Greeks, like to your point with using mathematics and geometry, the ancient Greeks knew, so, I mean, I don't know. I think that it gets that one's frustrating because I think that was like a prank or just something that started trending, and then people just jump on board, and then pretty soon there's people that don't know any better, and maybe haven't looked into the topic at all. I don't know.
Well, that kind of stuff happens all the time, especially now when it's good that there's tons of information coming out, but then there's also information
Well,
that's not being regulated, and it's like, who do I believe?
but that's what I was gonna say is like you can't make the argument that there's too much information and then you don't know the answer to things too, if that makes sense. Like you can't make the excuse, oh, I didn't know any better. Well, all you had to do is look it up. You have Google
Right.
on your phone, right? I mean, almost every single person has a smartphone these days.
But
So,
that's where we get into trouble is when we're relying like people need their intellect. It's fine. Like you could throw a bunch of facts at me, play the game. One of these facts is a lie. You throw three facts at me. People got to use their own intellect. So you just take it as a grain of salt when you're watching videos online. Use your own brain and decipher what I like to. I dig down deep and I see what resonates with me. But me and you had some pretty good schooling and stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of these people around the world weren't brought up in a society that has that kind of education, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the way that it is. But you
mhm.
know, it's good to just use your own intellect, and I think a lot of people aren't doing that anymore. And that's the problem that our society is going to face. People just not thinking for themselves anymore.
Yeah,
Because why would you? You have a calculator in your pocket. You don't need to learn math.
right. Well, again, I think it just comes down to um, not again just not having like the drive to like or the passion. Like I don't care about that. I'm not going to look it up, so it doesn't matter to them. But they're still going to have an opinion on it. So that's where it comes to this thing, and it's like, oh, you don't believe this or you believe that. So, but yeah, I think the whole that whole thing should be put to rest. I don't even know why that's. I still see people talking about that, but
I don't poo-poo anything though. I'll sit there and listen to somebody
that's my
if they're
point.
gonna.
When I've tried to listen to just see where they're coming from, and
Right.
unfortunately, not only do I not see it, they send me links. I don't want to see these links. So,
Right, right.
but so back to the UFO thing. Um, the nuclear thing is very interesting to me because what does that mean? Um, I've gone back and forth on this. I think for sure about extraterrestrial or breakaway civilization checking in on things, making sure things don't get out of hand. But then I also think, well, what if this is just other countries keeping tabs on each other with that whole thing too? Maybe the highest echelons of each society or country that has those capabilities is checking in to make sure the other one doesn't, get out of hand or do crazy stuff or have something they don't, So I don't know. I've gone back and forth on that. I think that the whole turning stuff on and turning it off and stuff like that, I think is kind of crazy. So I think that screams something more weird and mysterious than just advanced technology. But I mean, that's kind of where I stand on that.
Well, that's kind of where our family has a connection to this weird stuff a little bit with our grandfather being a pilot and having some kind of experiences. I don't really know the full story, but I know some stuff happened up in that plane when he had a bomb on board, right?
Yeah, our grandfather was a well, he was on. I don't know, he wasn't flying the plane. He was on the plane in the Korean War, and they were in a bomber and they were flying. So he was next to one of the bombs, and they had some system where another plane would call them off. But they make the same run like all the time or something, and then they usually get called off, and then sometimes you don't get called off, and then you apparently drop it. This time they weren't called off, but there was also some like weird orb thing in the sky, and this was all during right after obviously the Korean War is a little bit later, but like the whole Foo Fighter thing, I guess it was maybe something similar. And just when they got back down, I guess our grandfather asked the pilot, he's like, what did you see? Because there was this like crazy thing happening. And he said, I guess he like quit and like his face was white and he was just like out of it. So I don't know. Weird things happen. And actually that I'm trying to think what episode we did with our
that was a
John
long time
Hogan.
ago.
Yeah, it was one of our first episodes we did with John Hogan. I think it was on like ancient Egypt, and at the end I'll try and find it and put the link at the bottom of this, but he tells the story which he knew very well. I think it's the ancient Egypt with John Hogan or something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately we really weren't around. Well, we weren't old enough to have these kind of questions for our grandfather, but that's
yeah, he passed away when we were like 5, so
that's that whole nuclear age, though. That seems to be when things started to ramp up.
yeah. And so, but the weirdness is like, what's going on with all the, I mean, so some things can be explained by natural phenomena, I would think, like some weird lights could be earthquake lights or plasma discharges or something,
Of course.
Weird like that. But I do think that when you start seeing 90-degree maneuvers and twisting in and out of pilots and up and down and playing around kind of stuff, I think that speaks to something more, obviously. So
yeah, the stuff that we have on tape, obviously we have more technology because we have it on film now, and that didn't exist back then.
I mean, you do make a good point, though, with all the DSLRs out there and people taking astrophotography and people with night vision. I know people with night vision that see weird things regularly, but I don't know if they know exactly what they're seeing. You have night vision on. It's not like it's a telescope.
But we also don't really have a full understanding of the Earth and the natural phenomenon that happens on the Earth anyway. So some of that stuff may be just natural occurrences. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they all are. I think that there's some pretty credible people in the military and stuff. But I was watching it with my wife, and she was asking me, well, how come, what did she say? She said, how come these people come there and tell them not to talk about it directly after? Like, how do they know who saw it or where they saw it? And I thought I never even really thought of like the whole Men in Black thing.
I was going to say, yeah.
So like, you would have to think that, okay, so they're either tracking these things and they know about them via radar or special technology unknown or whatever, or they're something weird themselves, or the other possibility would be they're keeping tabs to make sure people aren't aware of whatever this crazy technology is.
Right.
So,
which would make a lot of sense, but again, some of the stuff tracks back to the 40s, and
but again, how do these people always know where these people live and who they saw? Do they just go through the pattern again? Do they know the route or pattern through radar, and then they'll just canvas that area and make sure? How does that happen?
Well, wasn't Stephen Greer like able to know zones that were gonna have activity? And
I think
he
he mentioned that he knew like the Phoenix Lights were going to happen beforehand or something.
Well, in that one documentary, he was taking groups of people out and he was like communicating with them. Or he knew.
That's not knowing before that. Yeah, that's how to make contact. Though he has like a process. That's what that whole thing is about. Is via like meditation and
right
is like calling these things in, kind of.
But if he knows that, then I'm sure others know that. So maybe that's one of their techniques.
Is that true though too? I mean, does that 100% work? I mean, that's you're under the assumption that that's 100% real, which I'm not saying it's not, but I mean, I'm open, but I'm not going to just like blindly say, yeah, that's what's happening.
I'm not going to say one way or another.
You just did.
I told you what Greer was doing. We have it on tape, ladies and gentlemen.
He committed finally, and he committed to the wrong thing. So. No, I know. I mean, it's just, I like the whole idea of the meditation and being able to contact these. And like I said, the weird thing that I had via meditation and then lucid dreams and stuff like that. So, I'm not.
That's the one.
I'm not opposed to it. I just like I said before, though. I'm not going to just believe just to believe. Like I want to see, the weird picture from that documentary CE5. It wasn't proof to me. It was just like that could have been an artifact. I don't know. And some of those videos were for sure fake. I think they were either those like lantern things that people throw up in the sky or something, but
Yeah, yeah.
I know not all of those videos I saw in CE5 were 100% the best UFO footage out there. So.
Yeah, right. So how does this documentary stack up? Is this probably the best one you've seen, or
Um,
was it worth the 15?
20. Yeah. I mean, it was worth it in the sense that I was entertained. I thought it was really well done. Kudos to, James Fox, and again, great job with the narration by Peter Coyote.
Mm-hmm.
That name just sounds funny saying it.
I love that. Well, that's my hiking name. When we go backpacking, we all have like animal names, and mine's the Coyote.
So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was well done. It was here's what it was. If somebody didn't know anything about this whole topic or was kind of interested in it and wanted to learn a little bit more, I think it's perfect. Obviously, I knew a lot of the stuff in there just from us doing this podcast and watching other documentaries and just being interested in the topic. But somebody that doesn't have that much familiarity with all this stuff, I think, it's perfect.
So it's a good hour and a half crash course on.
Yeah, and there's not like there's not like a person or a narrative where it's like, oh, I'm gonna have another documentary next year, and this is the narrative. It's not like that. It's just like, here's information. This is what these people in the military said. This is what these congressmen are saying. This is what So it was all stuff having to do with that.
Well, To the Stars Academy is one of the most controversial organizations. When they were talking about them, they just are like, this is an organization dealing with UFOs. They didn't really go into.
Well, that's because the difference of opinion, like To the Stars Academy has their narrative, which is they don't know. These things could be a threat. They may not be, but why not make sure, kind of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like err on the side of caution.
Right.
And Stephen Greer's whole, thing is he's saying that these are good beings and it's us that's the evil, and we've been we've been looked down upon or whatever. We're not part of this whole galactic community because we set off nuclear bombs or whatever, so like that's his whole narrative is we're the ones that are intrinsically evil that we need to change or whatever. So just a difference in philosophy there. Again, I don't know if they're particularly evil, but they could
I don't have that feeling.
They could be, if let's just say we're somehow related to them, whatever, if it's some weird genetic, to the whole Bruce Fenton thing, or genetically, or, whatever you want to say. If we're related to them, then that would mean that maybe some part of us is part of them. And if that's the case, then we might have some of the similar traits. Like maybe there's, again, I mentioned this on the last one, there could be aliens that are Mother Teresa's or, Gandhi's. And then there could be ones that are like, Ted
Hitler's.
Bundy or, or whatever, some evil person. So, there's probably the same spectrum if that's the case. I don't know if that is the case, but I'm just making the point that, if you believe that we come from them or connected to them, then there has to be some sort of connective tissue or crossover, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yeah, that was pretty much it with the documentary. I thought it was well done. Different. Like I said, there's no real agenda if you're just looking for information and like military clips and newspaper reports and stuff like that. That's kind of the documentary that it is. So I definitely think people should check it out if they're interested in this topic.
Yeah, I like stuff more that's just in the middle, and they're not trying to push anything or trying to have you commit to one side or the other. It's just, here's the facts. Again, use your own intellect, and then you can go from there.
Well, and I mean, documentaries are kind of objective by nature. Like, there's always going to be something. I'd say the objective of this documentary is to say, hey, look at this long history, 70, 80 years of crazy shit happening, okay? And then from there should be some sort of transparency, or we should try and, who knows what, and who can help us, or enlighten us on what's going on here if somebody has knowledge. So I think that that's the objective. But I think that when you look at, like, again, other documentaries, there's other objectives. And I'm not even saying that they're negative or whatever, biased. It's just that when you make a documentary, there's some sort of part of your ego that's involved. And I felt like there was very little or least amount in this documentary, which is good.
Well, yeah, the inherent nature of a documentary is to bring knowledge and awareness to a subject.
Right.
So that therefore you are trying to sway someone, if it's to save the ocean or whatever it may be.
Right.
That's the whole point of the thing. So yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, check it out. I think it's worth it if you love UFOs or you love the topic. Check it out. And I'm sure at some point it'll probably be available for rent. I don't know when, but
Yeah, I think it's usually like a month it comes out, especially in today's weird world where movies are just coming out, for the first time on TV, on.
Dude, I should have gotten in the game. Like I remember I told my wife when we first started dating, like 10 years ago, I'm like, how somebody's got to invent just movies right to your TV, because whatever, I'll go to the movie theater. I enjoy it, but it's not my favorite thing to do.
It's
I just want to see.
It's a pain.
Well,
in
I
the
just want to
ass.
see. I just want to see the movie. I don't really care, I guess, what the atmosphere is. Is my point. I don't need to be. I have a relatively decent sized screen. I don't need to see it on like 1,000 whatever it is. But yeah.
Well, Quentin Tarantino wouldn't agree, but
And there are some, you want to go see Star Wars and 3D IMAX. Yeah, that's awesome, of course, or whatever the case may be. But certain movies, I don't think it matters, or most movies, I should say, I don't think it matters. So, but yeah, like 10 years ago, I said, why aren't we? I wish. So, too bad I wasn't in the film industry, because this was kind of already happening too before this whole thing hit. So,
right. Well, I think the movie theater's lifespan's is going to be kind of cut
it was
short
already
here,
getting
but
shaky.
we'll see what happens.
I gotta say though, I hope the one by me doesn't close down, because their chicken tenders are the best chicken tenders I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Chicken tenders and a Slurpee, you can't. You're in heaven.
And they bring it to you too. It's actually, again, I know chicken.
Oh, I like those ones.
This is trust me, it's the best chicken tenders there ever was. I don't know. I don't know. It's like a 21 and over movie theater too, because they serve like alcohol and they bring it to you and stuff. So
yeah, there's one by my house. It's beautiful.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, for that experience, absolutely. But again, there's a lot of movies that's like, do I really want to see that? And is it even worth it to go to the theater? I think that's what the TV option gives you, is like, I don't want to do the whole thing. And
Well, there's a lot of movies that I want to see really bad, and then I go and see them. But then there's other movies that I'm on the fence about. If I could pay 20 beans and sit at my house, I'd probably do it instead of going and paying 10 each.
yeah,
The same price.
yeah, you make a bowl of popcorn, you grab a nice Mountain Dew for you. I know that's your
A
favorite.
little bit of rat juice, and
I'm not gonna lie, I had a Mountain Dew on my birthday, and this thing tasted unbelievable. Hadn't had it in forever. It was so refreshing. I don't drink them that often, but when I do, it's tasty.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can't if you have more than one though, it starts to get, you can't do it. It's got
I
to be
remember as
one.
a kid, we'd have these sleepovers. We get a 12-pack. We thought the 12-pack of Mountain Dew was like a case of beer. And you drink these things and play NHL 96 all night long. The whole point was to stay up all night. But again, I guess that was some weird way of us trying to alter our consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. Candy, sugar.
Oh, yeah.
We used to do a thing called smorgasbord, where we go to the store and buy tons of like snacks, and then go to our high school and play roller hockey on the tennis courts.
Doesn't even really add up. We're guzzling sugar, but then we're also working out at the same time. But that was the smorgasbord.
Yeah, those hockey games got intense too. I remember there was some diving at points. So.
Oh man, I love that. I love that stuff. I miss competitive sports. When you get older, it's just not the same. I could probably get into a league or something, but man, do I miss those old days.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even. I think back, I used to ride my bike like every day to school, and now I try and get on this thing, and I feel old and decrepit.
Yeah, well, if you do it more than once,
You still ride your bike though, don't you?
I ride miles and miles. I went yesterday. It's so nice right now. I'm trying to suck in all this sun until it's going away soon. So I don't know. I love
Bye-bye.
Michigan and stuff, but I'm going down to Florida here in a couple of
He
weeks.
goes, I'm disappearing.
Soak up that sun.
He's getting sucked up in a UFO, folks.
Yep. And on that note,
but yeah, that's it. We'll wrap it up here. We have some cool guests coming up, and then we're gonna probably do, since I don't know, we tried to. I don't know who I was talking to. I think the publicist for Brian Murescu, and he said something's going on. He doesn't know what's going on, so might not happen. So, which is a bummer because I wanted to talk to him, and we were going to wait to do our Lucinian Mysteries episode till after we talked to him. But since it looks like it might not happen at all, then
hey, if it's in the cards, it's in the cards. You know
hey,
what I'm saying?
we're always down to do it. It's open. I get it. Things come up. I'm not, like I said, it is what it is. But at the same time, we got to keep moving on with our show. So we'll probably do that Ancient Greece Part 5, the Lucinian Mysteries. I want to do that Super Volcano Part 2, and we also have some guests. So
Beautiful.
that's it. And then we're gonna figure out. Let's see here this weekend, what's going on with the shirts. Some are already spoken for, but we'll either put the rest of them up on our Patreon, or we'll add like a store page to our website at mindescapepodcast.com. If you haven't checked it out, please go there, check it out. If you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, whatever you're listening to our podcast on, because we are on all podcast platforms, please check out our YouTube channel. And if you're watching right now on YouTube, please check out all our audio platforms. And head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. For $2 a month, you will get exclusive content. And I think that's it.
Nicely said, my friend.
All right. Well, we love all you. And stay safe out there. And definitely check out The Phenomenon if you have not already. It is worth it. I think I'm going to try and convince Maurice to still pay that $20. He's a hard man to part with money, but I think I can do it. And, yeah, check it out. And we'll check you guys out next time on Mind Escape.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.